Well, surprise, surprise, surprise. This is me, comedian George Wallace, the new Mr. Vegas. I'm here with you tonight. I'm famous. But let me tell you something. Your host tonight, Joseph Jaffe, he's not famous. He's not famous at all. But that's all we can do for you tonight. That's the best we can do. You know, Joseph is like Jon Stewart wannabe. He's like a Howard Stern wannabe. He is not famous, but he's your host, okay? Maybe he'll do good tonight. This is what you paid for. This is what you get. So, ladies and gentlemen, maybe you want to show him some love. Please welcome the not so famous Mr. Joseph Jaffe. Make some.
There was one guy I was dealing with getting a little bit pissy over the kid interrupting the call thing, and I'm like, appreciate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, please. Yeah.
My bad. Please continue. It's very alliterative.
They are going to be the ones powering the experiences that every customer has.
Preference has power. I'm pretty sure Cato would say to me when I do every show, stop.
I think he would.
Those peeps are popping. Wait till you get the invoice.
Here. I have a question. When's the last time you danced? When's the last time you laughed?
Now. I don't want to dance with you.
When's the last time you flew a kite?
Toasted Oreo.
Look at you. You are insane.
How did I do that?
You're insane.
You know, I've been doing this show because I am insane. I've been doing this show since March of 2020, and I look back on my former self. I definitely see a slender, a thinner version of myself. Sometimes I see a little bit more facial hair, but definitely less gray or white. It's been a wonderful journey. This has been my school of hard knocks. We're going to be talking about school. I don't know if I'm too cool for school, but I'll tell you, one person who is definitely pretty cool when it comes to school is my guest, and I suppose I could do the French version. I was kind of practicing, but her name is Ryanne Plaisance, and she's the head of school of a different kind of school. We're going to be talking about her vision for the future of education, changing the game, changing the model. It's about damn time she's going to be coming on the show. And you know, normally I do a little bit of waffling around about my why statement. I talk about, you know, the concept of returning, of helping people get unstuck, returning to growth, becoming forever changed. But I'm going to just try and get into it very shortly because I'm a huge believer in this topic when it comes to thinking about school, about education, about continued ed. And so today's seated soliloquy, hell, I don't even think I've ever been into the soliloquy before the lead-in music was done. But this is going to be a first. And so, oh, you see, I was even trying to, there we go. We're going to let her finish. And now we can go into the new music. The School of Hard Knocks. You know, listen, it's very timely or appropriate. Look, this is October 27th. It is 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I remember the first season of The Apprentice. The first season of The Apprentice, where the two teams that were pitted next to each other, against each other, with Donald Trump as the arbiter, was book smarts versus street smarts. And I remember always wanting to be on the side of the book smarts people, because that's who I was. I suppose it's who I am even to this day. I was more of an academic, more of someone who applied myself and gained, I don't know, certain credentials or expertise from being very diligent, working hard and learning, as opposed to the opposite, which is, you know, fending for yourself and building reputation from getting your hands wet, getting your hands dirty as well. So the whole idea of book smarts versus street smarts has always been something that I've thought about. But at the same time, just thinking about where it's all going has been something that always fascinates me. When I think about, even with my kids, being able to tell them, this is why you go to school. You know, this is what you're going to learn. These are the things that you're going to remember, or these are the things that you will never, ever use in your life again and remember. And I think when I look back, whether it's my high school career or my college career, or even now looking at my kids going through it, what I realize is maybe it's not about the education at all, what you learned in class, but the life lessons that were taught along the way. Maybe going to college really just is about a social experiment and learning to live on your own. A very expensive one, I might add, a very, very, very expensive one. I mean, can't you just send them to sleepaway camp instead of going into debt with student loans? But at the end of the day, when we look back on these times, did it in fact set us up for what came next, for the next gate, for the next test? Or was it just, I don't know, a colossal waste of time? Look, I don't need to answer these questions, but Ryanne will tell us her point of view and maybe her vision on what education is, what it isn't, and perhaps what it should be and what it could be. Ryanne Plaisance began her career from a social work perspective, working with homeless and foster care kids in Chicago. In 2004, she continued her career in this field in LA after working with a local nonprofit and starting a program in Malawi, in Africa, just around the corner from me in South Africa, with homeless kids in LA and Malawi, Africa. She became focused on education. She started working with alternative education programs to education policy in the development area, to creating and teaching curriculum for both private and public schools. She states, we know the research, we know the changes that our kids deserve, but the change is too slow for our students. We have the same system we did 100 years ago. And so she did something about it. In 2015, she and her partner founded Argo Navis School to create the change students need today. So let's welcome her to the show. Ryanne, welcome to Joseph Jeff Is Not Famous.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited for you to be here. Now, I was looking, as we're reading the bio, I saw an interesting phrase, alternative education. I'm sure many of our kids have their own view to alternative education, as in, I'd rather not go to school and do something, anything but. But what is the definition of alternative education?
It's been a term that's been around for a while and was previously used for different methods of education that for maybe kids that were not following a traditional method. So you might have alternative education, for kids that are struggling with mental health. You might have alternative education for kids that are doing more of a kinesthetic or hands-on type of curriculum. Almost, I think, back a few years ago, the alternative education model was for kids that were not doing well in a traditional model. Like, I remember being in high school in my AP classes, looking out the window, and kids were building like a trebuchet. And they were the kids that were not doing well, doing this very cool, mathematical hands-on woodworking project. But we considered that less than this very structured, traditional advanced placement class that I was in. And so I think the definition has changed, but it still is something different to what is the norm.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about what you did and what you are doing and that vision for the future. A couple of weeks ago, in fact, last week, I had one of my favorite guests back on the show, Dave Rendell, the giant freak in pink, as he's known. He wrote a book of The Freak Factor. And his whole hypothesis is instead of turning the weakness into the strength, what if the weakness is the strength? And we think about kids that just don't do well at school. We think about kids that are just not book smart at all. And then I look back and I think about the really successful people in life. I mean, some of them, they all countered or overcame adversity. Many of them were struggled at school, dyslexic and people with learning challenges, shall we say? Um, is it as simple to say that kind of an indicator, perhaps, of not doing well in a traditional school is maybe a success, or a harbinger of success to come?
Well, I think you hit something really important there, right? Which is people that have had to fight for something, have had to fight and understand determination and hard work, and have had to bounce back from things that didn't come easy to them. Joe, do I still see you?
Oh, I'm here. I'm just
Oh,
giving
okay.
you the full screen.
Ah,
I can
so
also
I thought I
give
lost you.
you. Oh no, I can also give you what I call the voice of God. So
Right.
maybe you're not used to having the whole screen. There you go. I'll give you a little thumbnail. How about that?
That sounds good. What was I saying?
Yeah, so we're talking about adversity, and we're talking about kids that struggle in school, and generally we've looked down on them, or they've gone to their own what's it called, IEPs or PPTs, or they have to go through like a special program. But what if they're just special to start with?
Well, I think that's a big issue with our system right now. One, it caters to kids that are linguistic and logical learners. So if any child is anything but those two things, and those are not their strengths, the system is not set up for them to be successful. It also makes us have to question what our education system is about, right? Because if it's about every kid being at the top of their class academically, we certainly have missed out on what I truly think our jobs are, which is to see and help every kid develop their passions and their strengths. And that shouldn't be for us to get them all to be the same, or to make kids feel like they are less than if they are not a logical reader, or learner. And so we talk about kids being gifted specifically in an academic sense. When I look at our kids, my favorite thing is to see them all as being gifted. And it gets to be my privilege to help uncover, what those gifts are that each of our kids were given. And what if that was the lens in which all of our kids walked into an educational institution with? Someone is going to help me figure out who I am and how I can make a difference in the world and how I can find my happiness. That's very different than how we view education today.
I mean, it's one hell of a statement, and it resonates incredibly strongly. This idea that we are all talented, we are all magical, we are all miracles, we all have the potential to change the world for the better or for the worse, depending on how we harness our talents, realize our potential. And even that word "gifted," it's such a powerful and it's a triggering word, on so many levels. But you say, I want to just go a tiny little bit back. You spoke about this idea of this. I'm going to paraphrase, the sea of sameness, the vanillaization or the standardization of our kids. Everything from standardized testing and scoring, but this idea of everyone just fitting in, blending in, no one actually standing out, or perhaps maybe one can say the bar is so low that you don't have to do much to stand out. So there's that, and I'm sure you have thoughts on that, but I would be remiss if I didn't tag on social media and mobile phones into that exacerbation of the vanillaization of our kids. What do you think about that? I mean, friend, foe, have you figured out a way to to tame the beast, or how do you keep the dragon at bay?
Are you talking about more where our kids are coming from and feeling like they have to?
Well, let's start off with just social media. and mobile phones and social media.
And like everyone feeling like they have to be the Joneses and keeping up with all of that.
Yeah, yeah, and well, I mean, specifically kids. I mean, what impact have you seen it play on kids outside of the school, inside of the school? What's your approach?
Well, one, we have a mental health crisis with our teens and tweens today. And a big part of that is technology. And a big part of that is the communication that kids are able to do to each other that we didn't have when we were growing up. Right. So, and you look at a developmental age with our tweens and teens where the most important thing to them used to be their parents and their family. And now it becomes other kids and getting their confidence from other kids. Right. And so now it's about how do I look and how do I act and do my friends accept me? And so your whole self-worth and self-confidence gets wrapped up in that. And technology and social media makes that even tougher, right? Because everyone's posting, and these kids that we're talking about not putting everything on video online because it's there forever are still doing that. There's a piece that they want that, right? So it becomes really difficult.
I find it to be very interesting that you actually talk about this shift has actually moved families or moved kids from a family-centric or family-centered existence to one that is now about friends. I never thought of it that way. And it isn't just friends, because it's a weirdness, right? It's friends of friends, and it's kind of open season. I mean, Ryan, one thing that I've noticed with every single kid now is that their Instagrams are set to private. I don't even know if that's a default. But certainly there's been this ability to, or at least desperate attempt to shut off. I mean, it's probably impossible though. So that's interesting to me, the fact that the referential, that kids are not themselves from an identity standpoint. They're existing in the minds and the perceptions of their friends.
Well, and you just said something really interesting, because, developmentally, our kids go through those stages, right? As they start to become older, right? Where they're getting their acceptance from and their confidence from changes. But for the first time ever, because of technology and social media, it's not just that peer group, right? But it becomes the world at large that can have access to them, which as a parent is terrifying. There are so many online stuff that my kids are doing that I'm tracking, or that I'm trying to block, or that I'm looking at, while trying to balance giving them both the privilege and the freedom in which I want them to have to express themselves, but then not putting them in situations that are not appropriate for them to be in, or where they become, where predators or whatever are able to reach them. And so as a principal of a school, we are also trying to challenge that and how we are safely using technology in the classroom, and also protecting our kids from just when they're researching and when they're making videos and how they post them. And it's just a whole new space for all of us. And it keeps going so fast, right? With the development of technology, that we just need to be aware.
Well, I'm gonna take a little pause or a little break, and because this is, the subject is so meaty, and it's kind of intense and serious because it's so important right now. But let's just go from the sublime to the ridiculous just for a moment, and everyone wants to know about their principal, like what's going on behind closed doors. Who is the real? I'm sure all your students are watching, going, we want to know the dirty secrets about our principal. Well, I couldn't find any of them, unfortunately. You're going to be disappointed, but I did find out that you were actually paralyzed from eating sushi at the age of 24. Maybe you ate 24 pieces of sushi. What happened, Ryan?
Yeah, so things that you don't know exist in the world until they happen. So there is something called transverse myelitis, which is I got from a bacteria infection from eating a sushi that was not great. And I got food poisoning, and then soon after that, I ended up paralyzed, and it took me 2 years to walk again. So like you talked about people going through adversity, right? And people, what that does for us in our life, and completely changed mine. It's the only reason we have a school now. Opening a school is hard. Doing big things are hard. But having done and been through hard things, it makes it seem doable, right? Makes the impossible seem possible.
Doing big things is hard. Very, words to live by, very succinct, very powerful, and from a personal experience. In the moment when you are paralyzed, not knowing if you're going to walk again, how do you feel in that moment? Do you still remember what that moment was like?
Yeah, I mean, it was devastating. I'm such an active person, and I had like most of us, I think, a life planned that I was excited about. And just like that, your world is turned upside down. And something so physical also becomes like how you see yourself and how you see yourself in the world and what that means. And you're angry, right? There's the grief stages that you go through. And I've always been a determined person. And so, like, I remember going in to see the doctor, and I was with my boyfriend at the time. And he was like, you're probably not going, to walk again. Because I did get the top half of my body up pretty quick, like back. But it was my lower, my legs and my lower extremities that I didn't. And I remember turning, to my boyfriend and being like, well, we'll see about that. There was this story I read, or there was this other thing. So, and in 6 months, I was able to move my toes a little bit. And so that was promising. It's interesting if I wouldn't have been able to walk again, my hope though is still that I would have been able to found gratitude in then the different opportunities and doors and direction that my life would have taken me in then. I don't believe necessarily that things happen for a reason, or that you don't have control, or somebody's planning everything for you. But I do know when things happen that are extremely hard, we have choices in those moments, right? We grieve and we can be depressed, and you have to feel all those things. But then there's a point where you need to look at what you're going to do with the people around you and the circumstances that you're in. And it not saying that's easy. It's extremely difficult. But I'm sorry, I got off on a tangent. I'm not sure where I'm going with that other.
Oh, you're going exactly where you need to be going, and I'm going there with you. And you kind of answered a question that I was thinking, which is, what if you had never walked again? And so many people in those moments, they encounter the worst kind of adversity, and they either say, this is. I mean, I remember one of the very first interviews that I had on my show when COVID hit in 2020 was an Olympic Paralympian, I think is the, and in a wheelchair playing rugby for the United States, and he said, kind of like, you always hear people say that this is what was meant to happen, and if I could do all over again, this is how I would want it to be. I mean, this was meant to happen. It's very hard for people, who are on the other side, who can't relate. They want to relate. They want that push. That's the thing. You got to push. You got a nudge. It was the subject of my whole book, Forever Changed, which is it shouldn't have to take, death, divorce, adversity, midlife crisis, being laid off, in your case, rotten sushi, to be able to make the leap. But it helps. But what if you could actually be taught and receive life lessons that would allow you to make the right choices without having that happen to you?
I mean, gosh, it's such an interesting question, and when I drill down into that, I think gratitude is really where you can come out of situations that are hard, right? Like being grateful for things that you just took for granted before. That's why experiences can be so important. Understanding how other people live. I take the kids to Costa Rica at the school every year, and sometimes we run out of water, with the wells there. And something that our kids have never thought about before. But all of a sudden, not having water accessible to them is now something that they are grateful for. And that changes their perspective. And so your thing is, how do we get people to that point, maybe with having to go through those experiences? It's a good question.
Listen, I know the only reason you wanted to walk again was that you could one day be a pickle pirate at the Renaissance Fair, because you love mayonnaise and pickles. Your first job was a pickle pirate at the Renaissance Fair. And we actually have, thanks to AI, we actually have a photo from that first job. And there you are, or at least remember it's AI. But it's a very interesting version of what a pickle pirate would look like. You know, there's pickles everywhere. I have no idea what a pickle pirate is. What is a do you use the pickle as a sword when you swashbuckling say, I don't know, tell me.
Yes, pickles, get your pickles. That was my first job. And I made more money in that job than almost any other job that I've ever had since, well, in the beginning of my teens to 20s. If anyone's been to the Ren Fair, you know how much. Have you been to the Ren Fair?
I have not. I remember the Red Wedding on Game of Thrones, but I don't remember the Red Fair.
Never.
Where's the Red Fair?
No, not the Red Fair. The Renaissance Fair.
Oh, the Ren Fair. No, so like what? I have to dress up. And
yes.
Is there one in Connecticut? I have no idea.
Oh yes, they're big on the East Coast. You have to go.
I don't get out much. As you can see, I haven't left the area where I graduated, so I'm too afraid of the outside world.
Well, you know, the good part about you visiting the Ren Fair is that when you go back into the regular world, it'll seem much less exciting than the Renaissance Fair.
All right, I want to go to the Red Ren Fair. That's I've decided. All right, Ryan, the pickle pirate from the Red Fair. Let's segue into the topic of education, and you know, and obviously we'll talk about the school that you founded. I found this quote, which I think sets up a nice little stake in the ground, and the quote is, "Education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself." And this is John Dewey, which I assume is the same Dewey from the Dewey Decimal System. So what are your thoughts on this idea that education is not about preparing you for what comes next? Education is the experience. It is an inextricable part of life.
It's interesting because I 100% agree with this statement. And I think many people would agree with this statement, but are not willing to let go of what they know to make this statement a reality for their kids. And therein lies probably one of the biggest challenges that we face right now. We have the research, more research than ever before with technology and neuroscience developments. We know how our kids learn best. We also know that our kids no longer need to be memorizers and regurgitators of information. You can look up dates now. You can find things out like never before with the internet, right? Which didn't exist just 20, 30 years ago the way it does today. What we need is people that can figure out and solve problems. And if they don't know something, they can know where to get it. It's a very different skill set. And so sitting in a classroom, trying to explain to our kids what life is like and what those lessons are, versus our kids actually solving problems today and us having the belief in them that they are powerful people, whether they are 5, 10, 15, and even at those ages can contribute in a meaningful way, and giving them those opportunities becomes a far bigger and stronger education for them than anything they're going to just read in a book. I'm not saying it's one or the other. Reading should be a big part of any education that we give our kids, huge. But just sitting at a desk and just reading a book, we are depriving our kids of what they need for the world today, not just tomorrow, but right now.
I mean, I think of even in the last 12 months, the explosion of ChatGPT. that,
Yeah.
you know, where so many schools and education, you know, institutions are attempting to shut it down and eliminate it from the curriculum. I think, I mean, you may not be saying this directly, but I think the implication is accelerate the ability to find information, parse information, sift information, you know, determine what information is real and authenticated versus hallucinogenic, which is
Yeah.
what we call ChatGPT when it makes up stuff, and then perhaps maybe do more, achieve more. You know, if you have the tools, you don't need an abacus or even a calculator when you've got literally an entire what would have been a mainframe at your fingertips in seconds. Why not use it?
Right. Right. And there are some things that we want our kids, it'll be easier for them if they memorize, you know, and if they, that still exists, but we have all of this tech that we didn't have. How do we use AI and how do we teach our kids to use AI that, like you said, extends and heightens their learning and their work process? Those are the questions, you know, that we should be asking ourselves. I think change scares us. You know, as a human species, we hate change. We want to stick with what we know and what we're comfortable with. We fight tooth and nail to not change unless we are in a critical state. It is probably one of the hardest parts of humanity is that we can have the knowledge, right? Like climate change. We have a lot of knowledge about things in the world that need to change now. And yeah, why are we not making those changes faster? We have the ability to, but we hate change. And this is education. When we talk about that, is an example of a subject that we know needs to change, and are very slow, you know, to do it. I think one of the hardest things that I face with parents is, even if they understand that, having their kids get the best grades in their class is substantial to them, because that's how they're connecting success, right? And sometimes it's an unconscious thought that their child is successful if they get A's on tests. And the problem, you know, with that thought is that not all of our kids are gifted in that way. And so they might not be at the top of their grading class, but what are they great at and how do they find their passions? And so if your child is into music and is developing different, you know, songs and choreographing different shows, that is at the same par, it should be thought of as the same par as if your kid was getting, you know, straight A's. And so where we put our value in our kids and how we feel comfortable accepting the changes that we need is also hard.
I'm suddenly thinking back, and my mind is flooding with memories from high school, from middle school, from elementary school, and I don't think I can ever I don't think any of those memories relate to a grade, a lesson, a presentation. They all relate to experiences. I'm thinking of a performance in a music class. I'm thinking of we did something called, when I was, I think I was probably 10. Called the parachute debate. You know what a parachute debate is?
But tell me about your experience. I'm curious what you remember of it.
So for those people that don't know, parachute debate, a bunch of celebrities or fictitious people, sometimes, you know, alive or dead, you know, past or present, are on a plane, and the plane is about to go down, and there's only one parachute, and you have to basically debate and determine why you should receive that parachute. I was Jimmy Carter, and I won. And somehow they gave the parachute to me. I didn't even know who Jimmy Carter was properly, but I remember talking about peanuts with an accent. And a year later, I came back to defend my crown as Mickey Mouse, and I lost. I thought Mickey Mouse would have been a shoo-in. I even did the accent, but suddenly I just think about memories. I think about a science fair. So many science fairs. Made a board game one year. Another time went out and took a train 4 hours into this town and got all these minerals. And it's like, there it is. You know, there it is. You don't think about the And what's the point? The point is you go to high school to go to college, you go to college to get an entry-level job. It just doesn't make sense. So I want you to respond to that, and then I'm going to give you a chance to set up what you did about it, and why the school's different.
I love that you remember that. I think those meaningful experiences, you nailed it, are what we take away, right, from school and from our journey, not the test that you aced. You might take away the test you studied for and didn't ace, but so those moments we should give our kids, more to. Do you remember memorizing the periodic table? Did you have to memorize the periodic table?
Probably, but I don't remember the technique. And hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, something like that.
Well, that's impressive. Yes. But it's changed now. So I remember being so upset when I found out about that as an adult.
They changed the table?
Yes. Yes.
Who gave them permission to show? You mean hydrogen is no longer the number one seat? Hydrogen got, hydrogen fell off the number one position?
I couldn't even look at it, Joe. I was so upset about it. And planets, right? We have one less planet than we did when we memorized all the planets and did all those models.
Yeah, but he's a character at Disneyland, so that's okay. Poor Pluto.
You'll accept.
But carry on.
Yeah, so the memorization of information, right, which I will argue for some things is still important, but across the board should not be how we're wasting our times or our kids' times. And your example of the parachute debate is a great example, because it was deep learning. And that's the issue, is that when our kids are memorizing information and we're giving them so much information to pass a test, what we know is after like 6 months, something like 30 to 40% of the information now is gone because it wasn't deep learning. So now we spend all our kids' time in memorizing information to pass a test, and they don't remember the information long-term anyway, but they passed the test. So then what is the point of that? But in the experience that you had, you remember it because of the experience of it, which became deep, right? It became in your deep memories. And that is what we want to come from the experiences that our kids have. Like when our kids start doing sailing or scuba diving or different activities like that, they're having to do math and science standards so that they can understand how to navigate the boat, how to be underwater safely with their mate. And they're understanding those things because it's connected to something that is meaningful to them. And that becomes things then that will stay with them.
Deep learning, meaningful experiences, and understanding that connection and that continuum. By the way, I went and used ChatGPT now. The forgetting curve was first introduced by German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus in the late 19th century. And here's the first point. Without reinforcement, we lose roughly 50 to 80% of newly learned information within a day and up to 90% within a week. And then you can be like me, and I don't even remember what I said to you about 20 minutes ago. So, but that's the forgetting curve. I look back again at even when I was in college, and I remember how I used to memorize, like writing all the notes, and then I would visualize where everything was on a page. But I remember that. I don't remember what was on the page. I just remember what I was doing. It's weird. It's very meta.
And so we need to ask ourselves those questions, right? What is the education that is truly meaningful for our kids? Even if we feel more comfortable with them staying in the same model that we went through.
Well, I know part of the answer, so please sit back and watch this, and then we'll talk about it.
to our new campus, Argo Navis School. We're going to go on a tour around the school as we see what it looks like now. And then you're going to dream with us and you're going to see what it's going to be. I'm really excited to take you around. So I want to show you right now, this is a regular classroom, but what it's going to be is our design and engineering room. So we're going to fill this room with machines. We have teachers that are experts in the field. So our kids are really learning from people who do this kind of work every day. They will be able to build anything that they can imagine when they graduate from our school. Right now, we are standing on what will be our outdoor green space. Some of the features of our green space will be our basketball courts, our trampoline areas, our climbing walls. We're looking forward to having an eco-friendly garden with rainwater harvesting system and a pollinator garden. One of the things I like most about this space is it's going to be a great area for kids to be able to run around and get their energy out in an urban school. Also, what's really exciting is that the Bayona Wetlands is right down the street from us, which means our kids can go on nature walks. We're going to go bird watching. We can explore one of the last remaining wetlands in our area.
And we are expanding our program, our performing arts program, to include a music program, to expand our dance program, theater and film, green screen. And a space like this that gives us so much potential to work with, so much space that we can develop and adapt. There is an exciting amount of possibilities of things that we haven't even thought of yet to incorporate.
So this is our building. This is our 22,000 square foot school for middle school and high school. You saw what together we did at Venice. And we are excited to be moving to this bigger location so that we can do more things for our kids that we dreamed of as they continue to grow. So thank you for joining us on this journey. And we're excited to embark on this next phase with you.
Very excited. See you guys soon.
Bye.
Just waiting for it to fade to Bolivian, as Mike Tyson would say. So how did the finish, tell me the vision versus the realization? How did it all work out?
It's funny, I saw the pictures of the campus and the whole building is painted a different color now and things look different. So you forget how much has happened and how much growth there is sometimes unless you pause and look back. So that was kind of nice for me to see.
So chat to me a little bit about the approach now and specifically some of the steps you've taken, how you've put into practice a lot of the things we've been discussing in practical terms.
So a few things. We are a year-round school. The research on that is also based on learning loss for kids and how hard the transition is between those big breaks. And when they're getting new teachers, the new teachers have to adjust and they have to adjust to that new learning environment. And so learning loss is something that is very real. So one, we are a year-round school to help accommodate that. But also because we travel so much. So our kids are going on field trips, field studies, national and international trips throughout the year. So in order to accommodate that, we also need to make sure we have enough, in-depth classroom time as well. Field trips are like once a week, and that can be based on what kids are learning in their class. So if they have a photojournalism class, one of our classes went to like the LA Times and went to meet with different, reporters. And that was specifically for that class. We also do field studies where we call in experts in the field to come into our kids' class, and they bring in curriculum from like 6 to 10 weeks at a time. So it might be with a program we work at the ocean with marine biologists that are bringing their expertise to our kids. We work with the Youth Academy of Dramatic Arts, and they are experts in the field of theater arts. So they're working with our kids. So those are two different things that we do to give our kids that experiential, learning. I think I mentioned our scuba diving program starts at 8, and our sailing program usually starts at 9. And our kids are going on national trips starting in 4th grade. We also have a partner school in Costa Rica where kids can travel there for 3 weeks at a time and learn from and sit in a classroom there where it is a complete, immersed Spanish experience. And they get to live the way somebody else is living in a different part of the world, right? It's this remote town called Coweta, right on the Caribbean. So that is important. And then our small class sizes is probably the most important thing we do. We have 8 or 9 kids in elementary school classes. We have 10 to 11 in our middle school classes. We know that kids need our attention and need to be seen and heard in a class. So when we have 25 to 30 kids in a class, it becomes almost impossible for the best teacher to meet all of our kids where there is need. And so that's it. It's not an easy fix because it's a financial one that we have to look at. It's probably the most expensive thing, part of our program is small class sizes. And so that's the trouble and the hardship with our bigger school systems being able to implement that. But by far, the most important part of what needs to change in our education system is for kids to be seen and not to get lost in our system. It also allows us to allow our kids to work at a pace that is developmentally appropriate for them. Maybe they're speeding through math. So we allow them to go at their pace. They don't have to wait for the whole class to finish with them. But maybe they need more help in language arts. So we're going to give them more help. Our goal is not to rush kids through curriculum. It is to support them where they are so that they can be successful. And then we're also a language immersion school. So we know kids learn language at a young age so much easier than when we're older, right? Other countries are graduating kids and students knowing 3 to 4 languages. It's frustrating to me as an educator that we have information, again, that we're not implementing. All of our schools in elementary and middle school should have a language immersion program for our kids. It is the best way for our kids to become bilingual and biliterate outside of them learning another language at home, which is a better alternative. Sorry, I could talk forever about education.
No,
Interrupt me.
I'm listening. I'm listening, and I'm loving what I'm hearing. The thing that pops into my head straight away is, but this isn't for everyone, meaning that it cannot be affordable to most families or most students. This is not necessarily your problem. It's not your fault or your problem. But I would imagine that you've got a private school, you've got a different kind of private school offering alternative education. You've got public schools. You've got public schools in districts that are where just the quality of education is non-existent. Class sizes are exploding. It just seems like these are almost two worlds that are so far apart that they may never meet. Please tell me that there is some kind of hope or middle ground. You spoke about how change is hard. Will we ever see our public school education adopting a similar model?
That system is failing our kids. And remember before when I had said we only change when we're in crisis?
Right.
So there will be a time where that system becomes in such a crisis where we have no choice but to figure out a change. The other piece of this is that I equate education to be the answers to so many of our larger issues where we put so much money into our prison systems. How do we start the preschool to prison or stop the preschool to prison pipeline? It is in preschool. It is education. Our homelessness issues that we have. So much of the issues are related back to education. If we fix our education problem, that will trickle to all of these other areas. And once we all really start funding something that is so important to our country, not just our kids, but our country, things will start to change across the board. But you ask a question, which is the hardest, is how do we make that happen? Our school model, 50% of our families are on full and or partial tuition assistance. My partner and I have not gotten funding from any investors or any government funding to build this school. So we saved for 10 years, moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with our baby in tow, put all of our money. He thought, I think we were going to buy a house with that money. And he thought, I think we were joking when I was like, or we're going to open the school that needs to be open. But then we saved the money and we opened the school. And so my point is things are doable. And now what needs to happen with models like this, most of them existing actually in Finland, that was a huge inspiration for where we pulled. Finland's doing incredible things in their education model. And so how do we replicate what we know is working is the question. And we need people to fight for that. And
what are they doing in Finland besides, Nokia came out of Finland, Angry Birds, Clash of Clans, I don't know, Fish. What are they doing so well there?
Well, Finland notoriously for years has been at the very top of the international scores of
happiest country in the world.
Happiest country in the world. Even though it gets cold there, still one of the happiest places to live.
So if you can be happy in the cold, you can be happy anywhere, right?
I mean, come on, that's incredible. But things like they value our kids moving and being outside and how important that is. They don't pressure our kids at a young age to learn to read. Our kindergarten classes today replicate or a replica of what our first grade classrooms were years ago. I don't know when you went to kindergarten, but most people, at least my age and older, we had half-day kindergarten days, or we had nap times in kindergarten. That's all been changed. Most kindergarten classes that you look at today they've taken out dollhouses and play toys to focus more on academics. That is not what the research says. Anyway, Finland is following the research. They don't start teaching their kids how to read until age 7, even though they create a literacy enriched environment for them at a very young age. And their kids are testing at one of the top reading levels in the world. Anyway, they're doing many things.
Great. Well, listen, Ryanne, I've decided to promote you. You used to be a head of school. Now I'm pleased to say that you are the new Secretary of Education, whether you like it or not. I'm not sure which administration you'll be in about 10 days' time. But not a stressful
job. I said not a stressful job at all.
Yeah, well, they might do away with the whole education system. But in the last few minutes that we have together, I want to talk to you about something else, because you mentioned this concept of adult bullying, and we could probably spend an hour just talking about that. I was like fascinated because I was like, wait, they're adult bullies? That's something that carries on after school? Tell me more about adult bullying and what does it look like?
I feel naive because up until this past year, it was something I was familiar with. In the world we live in, there is people who are out there to do harm. And so I know that. I just had not experienced adult bullying ever to the level that I did this past year. And it is shocking when people become upset how they choose to deal with that. In the private school or independent school world, you are paying for that education. And so if you are not happy with the education, hopefully healthy adults decide to go somewhere else that is a better fit for their family, right? And this past year, that didn't happen. We had a person that was really upset with our diversity, equity, and inclusion. They thought our school had become too diverse, and they really wanted a colorblind curriculum, which was not in line with our anti-bias curriculum. And so after many conversations, we had the conversation of maybe this isn't the best fit of a school for you. And they were really upset about that. And they were like, this is a democracy. This is my school. And they tried to take it over with a contract lawyer that also went to our school. And when they couldn't, they tried to burn it to the ground by destroying me and my reputation, and also creating stuff on social media and online that was half truths and false narratives. It was painful and awful, and also you feel so vulnerable because it's a world, like, I would do so many things differently now, but it's almost like you don't want to give bullies power, so you don't engage. And that's the advice a lot of times that's given out. And if this was just one person who was a narcissist, that might have worked. But this was like a gang narcissistic mentality. And so they were like feeding off of each other, meeting and how to do harm and fueling each other's fire. And so they were just continuously posting things and writing things. And in our hope to not engage with them, what ended up happening is we gave them that platform, to say things, and we're not able to then address it in time. We didn't want to put wind into their sails, and that is not in the end what we should have done. And it's funny, I was just at the Holocaust Museum, the Tolerance Museum here, with one of our kids' field trips, and something was said that was really interesting. It doesn't matter what the lie is. If it is told over and over and over again, people start believing it. And that experience has been shocking to me. But it's true. You say something, we see it in our world right now. Doesn't matter what's true. If it's written, people start believing it. And I'd like to talk about how that is rooted, the issue with that. We can fix it in our education system, but it's not what's happening right now. And so anyway, so that has been...
it's tough in the sense that we've all been taught that, whether it's a narcissist or bully, the best thing to do is ignore them. But we're also humans. And sometimes it's very hard. The thing that first of all, I appreciate the fact that you shared that. And I'm a big believer that truth is truth, and the truth will set you free. And the work product is the work product. And the best thing to do is just, if you're interested in the school, come and check it out. Part of me is sad because I just wish my kids were younger. Otherwise, I've begged them, I've scrimped at them, going through high school and college when I came to this country, I was like, please, well, I'm going to come to this country. They weren't born yet, but like 10, 15 years ago, I was like, do computer program, trust me on this one, learn how to code. And one of the things, I've had so many people on the show, it's just been do this, please. If you can ever put this in your classes and call it the Jaffe curriculum, teach them improv. Teach them improv. I would say an overwhelming number of my almost 800 guests at some juncture of their life have gone through, I said overwhelming, not maybe like that makes it sound like 600. No, maybe but about 100 of them have gone through some improv program. And it's just so smart. It makes so much sense to think on your feet, to be able to adapt and weave and become more agile. I think you're doing it. I think you're doing this amazing mix of practical, tangible, hands-on, next generation experiential. It sounds amazing. As far as the bullying thing is concerned, the thing that it just dawns on me is bullies at school become bullies later on in life. And that's the truth. And that's the reality. You think people grow up, they don't. They don't. And the 10-year-old bully becomes the 25-year-old bully, becomes the 70-year-old bully. It is what it is, but there's enough love and light in the world to focus on. And I'm really glad that you came in to share your story and what you're doing differently. Ryanne, we've got kind of a few seconds left. You spoke about earlier, you said if you could do it all over again, but you're now doing it. You've overcome sushi poisoning. You've overcome a fair amount of adversity in your own life. Here you are reinventing education. What's the one thing that you want people to take away and remember from this interview, and certainly as the way that they think about education?
I think maybe the biggest thing when we're looking at ourselves, right? Like if I've been through this hard year, and in looking at education, is finding a place where we can let things go a little bit and be open, and trust in, I mean, it sounds cliche a bit, trust in ourselves, but I lost myself a little this year with me being so concerned of the people spreading rumors and saying things that weren't true. And in that process of becoming stronger again, I realized my anxiety went down so much, and I was able to do the work and focus on the work when I let go a little bit and just trusted in myself and in what we were doing. And also people show up, and they're not always the people that you expect. So be in a community, find your people. We are not supposed to do this journey by ourselves. We need each other. And I said big things are hard, but they also can't happen in a bubble. There is nobody who's accomplishing big things by themselves. So be aware of who you let in to your circle, but find a way to let people in. You're going to need them, and they're going to need you.
This too shall pass. Don't forget the mission. Don't take your eyes off the prize. And I'm sure it won't be long until you see Chuck Norris shows up with probably his grandkids or great-grandkids. Here's what Chuck had to say about you and what you're doing at the Argo School.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And we will be back soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.